The morning air hung heavy with autumn's chill as Daniel Harper knelt on one knee, his weathered hands working the laces of Lily's sneakers. The worn shoes had seen better days, just like his own work boots, but they'd have to last a while longer. "Double knots, sweetheart," he said softly, giving the laces an extra pull. "We don't want any trips today." Lily bounced on her toes, her backpack decorated with colorful pins jingling behind her. "Can we stop at Mrs. Peterson's bakery? Please, Daddy?" Her eyes sparkled with hope, the same gentle brown eyes that reminded him so much of her mother's. Daniel patted his pocket, feeling the thin wallet inside. He'd been saving every penny for today's bank meeting, but the smile on his daughter's face was worth more than money could buy. "Just one donut to share, okay?" The bell above Mrs. Peterson's bakery door chimed as they entered, and the warm smell of fresh bread wrapped around them like a hug. The glass display case gleamed with morning pastries, and Lily pressed her small hands against it, leaving tiny fingerprints as she studied each treat with serious consideration. "The chocolate one with sprinkles," she declared, pointing to a generously frosted donut. Mrs. Peterson, her gray hair tucked beneath a flour-dusted hairnet, smiled warmly at them. "Split in two?" she asked, already knowing their routine. Daniel nodded, pulling out exact change. "Yes, ma'am, thank you." They sat at their usual small table by the window, where morning sunlight struggled to break through the cloud cover. Lily took delicate bites of her half, making it last, while Daniel watched her, his own portion untouched. She had a spot of chocolate at the corner of her mouth, and he reached over with a napkin to dab it away. "My art project is going to be the best one," Lily announced between bites. "Miss Thompson says we can paint anything we want, and I'm going to paint our house. But with flowers all around it. And maybe a rainbow, too." "That sounds beautiful, sweetheart." Daniel's voice caught slightly as he thought about the mortgage payments he was barely managing to make on that little house. He forced himself to take a bite of his donut, though it felt like cardboard in his mouth. The walk to school was their special time. Lily skipped ahead occasionally, then waited for him to catch up, chattering about her friends and teachers. Her pigtails bounced with each step, the purple ribbons he'd carefully tied that morning fluttering in the breeze. At the school gates, Daniel knelt again to give her their morning hug. "Have a good day, sunshine. Make something beautiful in art class. Good luck at the bank, Daddy," Lily whispered in his ear, squeezing him extra tight. "You're the best fixer in the whole world." He watched her skip into the building, then turned toward downtown, clutching his folder of carefully prepared documents. The bank's glass doors loomed before him, and he paused to straighten his tie, the only one he owned, borrowed from his neighbor for today's meeting. Inside, the bank's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the marble floor. The young loan officer's desk nameplate read Thomas Wheeler, though he barely glanced at Daniel as he reviewed the application. "Mr. Harper," Wheeler said, his voice clipped and professional. "I see you're requesting a small business loan to start a handyman service." He flipped through the papers, his mouth turning down slightly at the corners. "Unfortunately, your credit history island. Problematic." Daniel's hands clenched in his lap. "I know my credit took a hit after Sarah, after my wife passed. The medical bills." He swallowed hard. "But I've never missed a mortgage payment. I can show you references from people I've helped, jobs I've done." "Mr. Harper," Wheeler interrupted, "the bank has very specific criteria for small business loans. You have no collateral, a credit score well below our minimum requirements, and no formal business experience." He closed the folder with a decisive snap. "I'm afraid we can't help you." The rejection felt like a physical blow. Daniel sat there, unable to move, as Wheeler efficiently gathered the papers and held them out to him. The young man was already looking past him, clearly ready for his next appointment. "Daddy?" Lily's voice startled him. He turned to see her standing in the doorway, her art teacher beside her. "I forgot my lunch money," she explained, walking over to take his hand. Daniel forced himself to stand, to take the folder with steady hands. "Of course, sunshine. Let me just—" He fumbled with his wallet, grateful he had enough for her lunch today at least. As they turned to leave, Lily suddenly stopped. Through the glass walls of an office, an elegant woman in a navy suit was watching them, her expression thoughtful. Before Daniel could stop her, Lily had dropped his hand and walked straight to the office door. "Lily," Daniel called, softly embarrassed, but she was already speaking to the woman, Margaret Reynolds, according to the nameplate on her door. My daddy just wants to fix things for people like he fixes things for me, Lily said, her voice clear and sweet in the hushed bank lobby. Doesn't everyone deserve someone who fixes what's broken? Daniel watched as Margaret's professional composure cracked slightly. She blinked rapidly, and he could see tears gathering in her eyes. She stood from her desk and came around to kneel in front of Lily, much as he had done earlier that morning. Your daddy fixes things? She asked gently. Everything. Lily nodded emphatically. He fixed Mrs. Johnson's stairs when they got wobbly, and Mr. Rivera's fence after the storm. And he always fixes my bike when the chain comes off. He can fix anything. 1. Margaret looked up at Daniel, really seeing him now. Not just another rejected application, but a father trying his best to build something for his daughter. She stood slowly, smoothing her skirt. Mr. Harper, she said, her voice warm but professional. I'd like to take another look at your application, if you don't mind. I don't want to waste your time. Daniel started, but Margaret held up a hand. Sometimes, she said, glancing at Lily with a soft smile, we need to be reminded that numbers on paper don't tell the whole story. Please, come into my office. The kitchen in the Harper home was small but cozy, with warm yellow walls that had seen better days. Mismatched plates and bowls filled the wooden cupboards, remnants of yard sales and thrift store finds that told the story of their modest life. The ancient refrigerator hummed its familiar tune as Daniel stirred a pot of spaghetti on the stovetop. Dinner's ready, sweetheart, Daniel called out, his voice carrying down the short hallway to where Lily sat in her room. The patter of small feet echoed through their tiny home as Lily bounded into the kitchen, clutching her favorite colored pencils and a stack of white paper. Her long brown hair swung in pigtails, tied with slightly uneven ribbons that Daniel had carefully arranged that morning. Can I draw while we eat, Daddy? Lily asked, already settling into her usual spot at the scratched kitchen table. Daniel couldn't help but smile. Of course, honey. Just be careful not to get sauce on your artwork. He served the spaghetti into 2 bowls, one blue ceramic, the other decorated with faded flowers. The mismatched set somehow seemed perfect for their little family of 2. Steam rose from the simple meal as he set the bowls down, and Lily immediately began twirling her fork while her other hand moved across the paper. Daniel watched his daughter draw, his own fork suspended halfway to his mouth. The weight of the day's rejection sat heavy in his chest, but he tried to keep his expression neutral. Numbers danced through his head: rent, utilities, groceries. The factory severance pay wouldn't last forever. Look, Daddy, Lily held up her drawing. This is your repair shop. See the sign? It says Harper's Fix-It Shop in big letters. The childish illustration showed a colorful building with tools floating around it like magic. A stick figure with a big smile, clearly meant to be Daniel, stood proudly in front, holding what appeared to be a hammer larger than his head. That's beautiful, sweetie, Daniel managed, his throat tight. You made it look perfect. Lily beamed and returned to her artwork, adding more details with concentrated determination. The scratch of her pencils against paper filled the quiet kitchen as Daniel pushed his spaghetti around his bowl, his appetite gone. The sudden ring of his cell phone made them both jump. Daniel fished it from his pocket, frowning at the unfamiliar number. Hello, Mr. Harper? This is Margaret Reynolds from First State Bank. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He stood up quickly, moving toward the living room for privacy. Yes, Mrs. Reynolds. Thank you for calling. Please, call me Margaret. Her voice was warm, nothing like the cold professionalism of the loan officer from earlier. I've been looking over your application, and I wanted to discuss it with you. Daniel pressed the phone closer to his ear, glancing back at Lily, who was now adding what looked like rainbows to her drawing. I appreciate you taking the time to review it. Your daughter's words today, they really made me think. Margaret paused. I believe in second chances, Mr. Harper. And I can see you're trying to build something worthwhile. Hope flickered in Daniel's chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. Thank you, that means a lot. I'll be honest with you, the loan committee is going to be tough to convince. Your credit history from after your wife's passing, the medical bills, they'll see it as too much risk. Margaret's voice was gentle but direct. But I'm willing to personally review your application and see what we can do. Maybe we can find a way to structure this that might work. Daniel leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. I understand. I know my credit isn't good, but I'm ready to work hard. This isn't just about me. It's about creating a future for Lily. I can see that, Margaret replied. Let me work on this over the next few days. I can't make any promises, but I'll do my best to help. After ending the call, Daniel stood in the dim living room for a moment, processing. Hope and doubt warred in his mind. The possibility of a chance, however small, made his heart race, but the fear of another rejection loomed large. Who was that, Daddy? Lily's voice pulled him back to the present. Just someone from the bank, sweetheart. Daniel returned to the kitchen, managing a smile. Ready for bed? It's getting late. Lily gathered her drawings carefully. Can I hang this one up? So you can see your shop every morning? Of course we can. Daniel's voice softened as he helped her tape the picture to the refrigerator. The stick figure version of himself smiled back, surrounded by tools and possibility. After their bedtime routine, teeth brushed, face washed, pajamas on, Daniel sat on the edge of Lily's small bed. Her room was a canvas of childhood dreams, with drawings taped to every wall and a small nightlight casting star shapes on the ceiling. Story tonight? Lily asked, snuggling under her worn but beloved butterfly blanket. Not tonight, honey. It's already past your bedtime. Daniel smoothed her hair back from her forehead, marveling at how much she looked like her mother in the soft light. But tomorrow we'll read 2 chapters to make up for it. Lily nodded, her eyes already heavy with sleep. Daniel stood and adjusted her blanket one last time, then reached for the lamp on her bedside table. Just as the room fell into darkness, broken only by the gentle glow of her nightlight, Lily's sleepy voice drifted up. I believe in you, Daddy. Daniel froze, his hand still on the lamp switch. Those 5 simple words, spoken with such pure conviction, pierced straight through his doubt and worry. His daughter's faith in him was unwavering, untouched by credit scores or bank rejections. Sweet dreams, my little artist, he whispered, carefully closing her door. In the quiet of the hallway, Daniel touched the wallet in his back pocket, where he kept the worn photo of his late wife. The hope that had sparked during Margaret's call grew a little stronger, fed by his daughter's innocent belief in him. Maybe, just maybe, they could make this work after all. The autumn breeze rustled through the maple trees as Daniel waited outside Middlebrook Elementary. His worn work boots scuffed against the concrete, hands tucked into the pockets of his faded jean jacket. The familiar sound of children's laughter and running feet grew louder as the school doors burst open. Lily emerged from the crowd, her purple backpack bouncing with each step. Her dark pigtails swung as she ran toward him, a piece of paper clutched in her hand. Daddy, look what I made in art class today. Daniel's tired face brightened as he knelt to examine her drawing. Bold crayon strokes depicted 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, standing beside what looked like a toolbox. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Is that us? Uh-huh. And look, I drew your tools too. Lily pointed proudly at the squiggly shapes meant to represent hammers and wrenches. They began their walk home, taking their usual route through the quiet neighborhood. Maple Drive was lined with modest homes, some showing their age with peeling paint and sagging gutters. Lily skipped alongside Daniel, chattering about her day. The spelling test she aced, the funny joke her friend Tommy told at lunch, the new song they learned in music class. As they rounded the corner onto Oak Street, a familiar figure caught Daniel's attention. Mr. Carter, the elderly veteran who lived in the pale blue house with white trim, was examining his wheelchair ramp with visible frustration. The old wooden structure had partially collapsed on one side, making it unusable. Daniel slowed his pace, watching as Mr. Carter attempted to prop up the fallen board with his cane. The older man's weathered face was pinched with worry. Everything okay, Mr. Carter? Daniel called out, already changing direction toward the house. The veteran straightened up slowly, his joints creaking almost as much as the damaged ramp. Oh, afternoon, Daniel. Lily. He nodded at them both, trying to maintain his dignity despite the clear distress in his eyes. Just this confounded ramp. Gave out this morning when my nephew brought my groceries. Daniel stepped closer, examining the structure. The support beams had rotted through, causing the collapse. Mind if I take a look? You know about this sort of thing? Mr. Carter asked, his bushy gray eyebrows raised. Yes, sir. Used to help my uncle with his contracting business during summers. Daniel knelt beside the ramp, testing the wooden boards. "Lily, honey, can you run home and grab my toolbox? The red one in the garage?" Lily's face lit up. "Can I help when I come back?" "Of course, sweetheart. Just be careful crossing the street." As Lily hurried off, Mr. Carter shifted his weight on his cane. "Don't want to be any trouble, son. Times are hard enough these days." "No trouble at all, sir." Daniel began clearing away the broken pieces. "Besides, can't leave a fellow neighbor stranded." Lily returned quickly, proudly lugging the red toolbox that was almost as big as she was. Daniel got to work, showing her how to hold the measuring tape and sort the nails into sizes. Mr. Carter watched from his porch chair, occasionally sharing stories from his military days. The autumn sun warmed their backs as Daniel worked, explaining each step to Lily. "See how this support beam is rotted? We need to replace it with pressure-treated lumber. That'll hold up better against the weather." His hands moved with confident precision, muscle memory from years of similar repairs taking over. "Just like fixing my dollhouse," Lily exclaimed, handing him nails with careful concentration. "That's right, sweetheart. Same principle, just bigger parts." As Daniel worked, neighbors passing by called out greetings. Mrs. Peterson from across the street brought over cookies. Tommy's mom stopped to chat, mentioning her own broken fence with a meaningful look at Daniel's skilled hands. The sun was lower in the sky when Daniel finally stood back, wiping sweat from his forehead. The ramp stood solid and secure, fresh wood gleaming against the weathered boards he'd been able to salvage. Mr. Carter tested it with his cane, then slowly walked up and down. "Solid as a rock," he declared, voice gruff with emotion. "Now, what do I owe you?" "Nothing, sir. Just helping a neighbor." "Nonsense." Mr. Carter reached for his wallet. "Work's worth paying for." Daniel held up his hand. "Really, Mr. Carter? I'm glad to help. Maybe just save me a cookie next time Mrs. Peterson brings some over?" The older man's eyes were sharp as he studied Daniel. "You're a good man, Harper. Don't let anyone tell you different." He turned to Lily, who was gathering up the tools. "And you're quite the assistant, young lady." Lily beamed. "See, Daddy? You're already doing your job." Her words hit Daniel like a physical force, making his throat tight. She was right, in her simple, childlike way. This was what he'd wanted to do all along: help people, fix things, make a difference in his community. Back home in their small kitchen, Daniel made grilled cheese sandwiches while Lily set their mismatched plates on the table. The familiar smell of melting butter and toasting bread filled the small space as orange sunset light streamed through the window. Lily dunked her sandwich triangle into her tomato soup. "Mr. Carter's ramp looks way better now. And did you see how happy Mrs. Peterson was? And Tommy's mom kept looking at our broken fence." Daniel nodded, watching his daughter's animated face. The weight of the bank's rejection still sat heavy in his chest, but it felt different now. The work he'd done today, the solid feel of tools in his hands, the satisfaction of fixing something broken, the gratitude in Mr. Carter's eyes, it all meant something. Maybe the loan wasn't the only path forward. They finished their dinner as the last rays of sunlight painted the kitchen walls gold. Lily's art class drawing sat propped against the sugar bowl, those simple stick figures standing proud beside their toolbox, a child's vision of their future together. The morning sun cast long shadows across Daniel's front porch as he sat in the old wooden chair, warming his hands around a chipped coffee mug. The aroma of fresh coffee mixed with the crisp autumn air. Inside, through the screen door, he could hear Lily humming as she ate her cereal, the spoon clinking against the bowl in rhythm with her tune. "Don't forget to drink your milk," Daniel called out, smiling as Lily responded with an exaggerated slurping sound. The crunch of footsteps on fallen leaves drew his attention. Mrs. Thompson from 3 houses down was making her way up his walkway, her gray hair neatly pinned back and her cardigan pulled tight against the morning chill. "Good morning, Daniel," she called out, waving. "I saw what you did for Mr. Carter yesterday. That was mighty kind of you." Daniel shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just trying to help out a neighbor, that's all." "Well, speaking of helping," Mrs. Thompson twisted her hands together. "I hate to bother you, but my kitchen faucet's been dripping something awful. I called a plumber, but they want to charge me an arm and a leg just to look at it." Before Daniel could respond, Lily appeared at the screen door, milk mustache still visible on her upper lip. Daddy can fix anything, Mrs. Thompson. He fixed our faucet last month with just a wrench and some. She scrunched up her face, thinking, some washers. Daniel couldn't help but chuckle at his daughter's enthusiasm. Tell you what, Mrs. Thompson, I can stop by after I drop Lily at school. 2 hours later, Daniel was under Mrs. Thompson's sink, Lily's words echoing in his mind as he replaced the worn-out washer. The job took less than 30 minutes, but Mrs. Thompson's gratitude was enormous. She tried to press a $20 bill into his hand, but Daniel shook his head. Just being neighborly, he said, packing up his toolbox. Besides, those cookies you make during Christmas time are payment enough. Word spread quickly in their small town. That afternoon, while Daniel was fixing a loose board on his own front steps, Sarah Miller from the corner house approached him. A single mother of 2, she looked exhausted and worried. Daniel, I heard you helped Mrs. Thompson this morning, she said, shifting nervously. My washing machine's been making this awful noise, and with 2 kids in sports. She trailed off, embarrassed. I'll take a look, Daniel offered, grabbing his toolbox. Lily, who had been drawing on the porch, jumped up. Can I come too? I'm the best helper, she declared, already gathering her crayons and paper. At Sarah's house, Daniel found the washing machine's drive belt had slipped. While he worked, Lily sat at the kitchen table, tongue sticking out in concentration as she drew. When the repair was finished, she presented Sarah with a colorful picture of a washing machine with a happy face. See? Now it's smiling because Daddy made it all better, Lily explained proudly. The next day brought Mrs. Chen from the house behind theirs, concerned about a squeaky door that was driving her cats crazy. Daniel fixed it in minutes, while Lily entertained the cats with a piece of string. Another thank you drawing was added to Mrs. Chen's refrigerator. By Friday, Daniel had helped fix a broken window latch for the Petersons, replaced a faulty light switch for old Mr. Jenkins, and repaired a wobbly chair for Miss Rosa at the diner. Each time, Lily was there, offering to hold tools, making conversation with the neighbors, and leaving behind her cheerful artwork. As the sun began to set that evening, Daniel and Lily sat together on their porch swing. The gentle creaking, a familiar comfort. The autumn air had turned cool, and Lily snuggled closer, wrapped in her favorite purple blanket. Everyone knows you're a fixer now, Lily said softly, looking up at him with those eyes that reminded him so much of her mother's. Daniel gazed out at their quiet street, where porch lights were beginning to flicker on one by one. Pride swelled in his chest at his daughter's words, but beneath it lurked the familiar weight of uncertainty. The stack of bills on his kitchen table hadn't gotten any smaller, and kindness didn't pay the mortgage. Still, as he held his daughter close and felt the warmth of her small body against his side, Daniel allowed himself to enjoy this moment of peace. The porch swing swayed gently, carrying them back and forth in the growing darkness. You've made lots of people happy this week, Lily continued, yawning. Just like I said you would. Daniel squeezed her shoulder gently, watching as their neighbor's cat stalked through the yard, pausing to stretch beneath the maple tree. The same tree where Lily had learned to ride her bike, where they'd built a snowman last winter, where they'd scattered her mother's favorite flower seeds in the spring. The weight of his responsibilities pressed against him, but for now, he let himself feel the simple joy of being exactly where he was, doing exactly what he was meant to do. His daughter's steady breathing beside him, the chorus of crickets in the growing darkness, and the knowledge that somewhere in their small town, people's homes were a little better because of his handiwork. It wasn't much, but maybe it was a start. Margaret Reynolds drummed her fingers on her polished oak desk, staring at the manila folder in front of her. Daniel Harper's loan application sat open, its pages worn at the corners from her constant review. Through her office window, she watched the usual morning crowd filter through the bank lobby, their chatter a distant hum. She picked up Daniel's credit report again, though she'd memorized every detail. The numbers told one story: late payments, mounting medical bills from his wife's illness, the struggle after the factory closure. But Margaret couldn't shake the image of little Lily's earnest face or forget her simple, powerful words about her father. What do I do? She whispered to herself, adjusting her reading glasses. The golden nameplate on her desk caught the morning light. Margaret Reynolds, branch manager, 25 years in banking, and she'd never felt so conflicted about following protocol. She gathered her purse and car keys, making a decision. "Janet," she called to her assistant, "I'm heading out for an early lunch. Back in an hour." The spring air was crisp as Margaret drove through the familiar streets of their small town. She'd heard through the grapevine that Daniel was helping Mr. Carter with some home repairs today. Following the directions she'd quietly obtained, she pulled up to a modest white house with peeling paint and a newly repaired wheelchair ramp. The sound of hammering drew her around the side of the house. There was Daniel, kneeling beside Mr. Carter's garden shed, carefully replacing rotted boards while explaining each step to Lily. The little girl sat cross-legged nearby, her notebook open as she sketched her father at work. "The key is making sure it's level," Daniel was saying, his voice patient and warm. "Otherwise the door won't close right in winter." Mr. Carter stood watching from his back porch, leaning on his cane. "Young man, you've got the touch, no doubt about it. Haven't seen craftsmanship like that since my daddy's time." Margaret cleared her throat softly. 3 heads turned her way. "Mrs. Reynolds." Lily jumped up, her sketch forgotten. "Did you come to see Daddy work? He's really good." Daniel quickly stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Miss Reynolds, I wasn't expecting." "Please, call me Margaret," she said, trying to put him at ease. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I wanted to see your work firsthand." Mr. Carter hobbled forward. "This young man's a godsend, Mrs. Reynolds. Fixed my ramp last week, now he's tackling the shed. Won't take a dime either, though Lord knows I've tried." Margaret watched as Daniel's cheeks reddened. "Just being neighborly, sir. Anyone would do the same." "No," Mr. Carter said firmly. "Not anyone would. Not anymore." Lily tugged at Margaret's sleeve. "Want to see my daddy's toolbox? He has names for all his tools, and he lets me organize them." Margaret found herself being led to a worn metal toolbox, its blue paint chipped but its contents meticulously arranged. Lily proudly showed her each compartment, explaining how her father had taught her the name and purpose of every tool. "This is Bobby the ball-peen hammer," Lily said seriously. "He's best friends with Peter the pliers." Margaret couldn't help but smile, noticing how, even in this small detail, Daniel had found a way to make his work accessible and fun for his daughter. As Daniel resumed his work on the shed, Margaret observed his technique. His movements were precise, economical, and skilled. He worked with a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with his nervous demeanor at the bank. "Would you like some lemonade?" Mr. Carter offered. "Lily here made it fresh this morning." They sat on the porch, sipping tart lemonade from mismatched glasses. Margaret watched Daniel work while Lily chatted about her father's various repair projects around town. "Sometimes people try to pay Daddy," Lily confided, "but he says helping neighbors is its own payment. I think that's good, but I also think Daddy needs new work boots." Margaret felt something catch in her throat. She turned to Mr. Carter. "How long have you known the Harpers?" The old veteran's eyes softened. "Known Daniel since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. His daddy used to fix things too, before the accident. That boy's got the same gift. Sees what's broken and knows just how to make it right." Lily nodded solemnly. "Daddy says everything can be fixed if you have patience and the right tools. Except..." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Except Mommy. But he says that's okay because she's not really broken, just in heaven instead." Margaret blinked back sudden tears. She thought about her own journey, how she'd started in banking with dreams of helping people build better lives. Somewhere along the way, those dreams had gotten buried under policies and procedures. Later, as Daniel finished up, Margaret pulled him aside. "Mr. Harper, Daniel, I want you to know, I'm impressed. Not just with your work, but with how you've created something meaningful here. Without any formal business structure." Daniel wiped his brow. "Thank you, but I know it's not enough for the loan committee. I understand the rules." "Rules," Margaret said thoughtfully, "sometimes need to be reconsidered. I can't make any promises, but I'm not giving up on this. There might be other ways we haven't explored." The hope that flickered in Daniel's eyes made her heart ache. That evening, in the Harpers' small kitchen, Daniel and Lily sat down to a simple dinner of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. The checkered tablecloth was faded but clean, and a vase of dandelions Lily had picked brightened the center of the table. "Mrs. Reynolds is nice," Lily said, carefully cutting her meatloaf into tiny squares. Did you see how she watched you work, Daddy? Like she was really interested. Daniel nodded slowly. You know, sweetheart, I think Margaret might really be our friend. Lily looked up from her plate, her eyes wise beyond her years. She cried for you, Daddy, she whispered. That means she cares. The Sunday morning sun painted golden streaks across the sidewalk as Daniel and Lily Harper made their way to church. Lily skipped beside her father, clutching her well-worn Bible decorated with colorful sticky notes and filled with her own illustrations. Her patent leather shoes clicked rhythmically against the concrete, matching the cheerful bounce in her step. Do you think Mrs. Peterson liked how we fixed her screen door, Daddy? Lily asked, looking up at her father with bright eyes. Daniel smiled, adjusting his second-hand tie. I'm sure she did, sweetheart. You did a great job holding the tools for me. As they approached the red brick church with its white wooden doors, familiar faces turned to greet them. Mrs. Thompson, the choir director, waved warmly. Mr. Carter, seated in his wheelchair by the entrance, beamed at them from beneath his veteran's cap. There's our handyman, Mr. Carter called out, his voice carrying across the church steps. That ramp's working better than ever, Daniel. Inside the church fellowship hall, the air hummed with excitement. Tables laden with home-baked goods and craft items filled the space. The annual fundraiser for the church's roof repair was in full swing. Daniel noticed Margaret Reynolds standing near the punch bowl, looking different outside her usual bank attire in a flowered dress. Daniel, Lily! Mrs. Peterson hurried over, her gray curls bouncing. We've been waiting for you two. Before Daniel could respond, Reverend Williams stepped to the front of the room, tapping a spoon against his glass. The crowd quieted, and Daniel felt Lily's small hand slip into his. Friends, the Reverend began, his deep voice filling the space. We're here today not just to raise funds for our church, but to support one of our own. Daniel Harper has been quietly serving this community, asking nothing in return. Daniel's chest tightened as people turned to look at him. Lily squeezed his hand harder. Mr. Carter wheeled forward, holding a thick envelope. Daniel, you wouldn't take payment for fixing my ramp. But you can't stop us from showing our appreciation. Mrs. Thompson stepped forward next, holding a stack of papers. We've all signed this petition to the bank. Every single person you've helped, and then some. Daniel's vision blurred as person after person stood up to share their stories. He fixed my washing machine when I couldn't afford a repair service, said Sarah Miller, a single mother of 3. Wouldn't take a dime, just asked if I had any coffee to spare. Fixed our fence after the storm, elderly Mr. Jenkins added. Lily even painted it afterward. Margaret moved to the center of the room, her eyes shining. As your bank manager, I've been reviewing your loan application, Daniel. With this showing of community support and the collection fund we've gathered as collateral. She paused, smiling. I believe we have something very compelling to present to the board. Daniel stood frozen, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Lily tugged at his sleeve, beaming up at him. See, Daddy? I told you everyone knows you're a fixer. Mrs. Peterson pressed an envelope into his hands. It's not much, but we've all pitched in what we could. Consider it an investment in Harper. Daughter repairs. The room erupted in applause, and Daniel found himself surrounded by neighbors, each offering encouragement and support. Some pressed small bills into his hands, others promised future business. Margaret watched from nearby, nodding encouragingly. I don't know what to say, Daniel managed, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you all. This means more than you know. Later that evening, Daniel and Lily sat at their kitchen table, 2 bowls of ice cream sundaes between them. Daniel had splurged on chocolate sauce and sprinkles, a celebration of possibility. Lily hummed as she drew on a paper napkin, her tongue poking out in concentration. Daniel watched her work, spooning ice cream slowly, savoring both the sweetness and the moment. Done, Lily announced, holding up her creation. In careful letters, she had drawn Harper, Daughter Repairs, surrounded by tools and hearts. A stick figure of herself and her father stood hand in hand beneath the logo. Daniel reached for a magnet and carefully pinned the napkin to the refrigerator, right at Lily's eye level. They stood back together, admiring the impromptu artwork while their ice cream melted slightly in their bowls. Perfect, Daniel said softly, pulling his daughter close. They returned to their Sundays, the napkin drawing, watching over them like a promise of better days ahead. The morning sun peeked through Daniel's worn curtains as his alarm buzzed at 6 a.m. He stretched and smiled, feeling unusually light. Today was the day of the loan committee meeting. After weeks of community support and Margaret's help, he finally believed things might work out. In the kitchen, he hummed while making pancakes, something he rarely did on weekdays. The sweet smell drew Lily from her room, her hair still messy from sleep. "Pancakes?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "Is it my birthday?" Daniel chuckled, flipping a golden-brown circle onto her plate. "No, sweetie. Just felt like making something special today. The loan committee meets this morning." Lily's face lit up as she climbed onto her chair. "That's when they decide about your fixing business, right?" "That's right." Daniel drizzled maple syrup over her pancakes, watching it pool in the little divots. "With all the support from everyone in town, and Miss Margaret helping us, I think we might have a real chance." While they ate, Lily chatted about her upcoming school art show. Daniel listened, savoring these quiet moments with his daughter. The community's recent support had given him hope he hadn't felt since losing his factory job. Maybe things were finally turning around. At the school gates, Lily hugged him extra tight. "Promise you'll tell me everything after school?" "Promise," Daniel said, kissing the top of her head. "I'll pick you up right here with the news." He watched her skip into the building, her backpack bouncing with each step. The morning felt full of possibility. The bank lobby was quiet when Daniel arrived. A few customers filled out deposit slips, while the young loan officer who had first rejected him typed away at his computer. Daniel's shoes squeaked against the polished floor as he made his way to Margaret's office. Through the glass, he could see Margaret on the phone. Her face looked drawn, and she held her head in one hand. Something in her posture made his stomach tighten. When she saw him, Margaret quickly ended her call and waved him in. "Daniel, please sit down." The chair creaked as he lowered himself into it. Up close, Margaret's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, his throat suddenly dry. Margaret folded her hands on her desk. "I received some news this morning that I need to share with you." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Corporate has made a decision to close several branches in our region, including this one." The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. "Close? But what about—" "The loan committee meeting has been canceled," Margaret said softly. "With the branch closing, they won't be considering any new applications." "I'm so sorry, Daniel." He sat there, stunned. The hope he'd been carrying crumbled inside his chest. The whole community supported this, he managed. The petition, the fundraiser. "I know," Margaret's voice cracked. "I fought for you, Daniel. I truly did. But it's not just your loan. Everyone at this branch, including me, will all be out of jobs within 2 months." Daniel slumped in his chair. He thought of all the people who had believed in him, who had shared their stories and contributed what little they could to help. He thought of Lily's proud face as she helped him fix Mr. Carter's ramp. How could he face them all now? "I feel like such a fool," he whispered. "No." Margaret reached across the desk to touch his arm. "You're not a fool. You're a good man who's trying his best for his daughter. The fool is this system that can't see what's right in front of it." But Daniel barely heard her. All he could think about was Lily's face this morning, so full of excitement. He'd promised her good news. He stood up mechanically. "Thank you for trying, Margaret." "I mean that." "Daniel, wait." She started to rise, but he was already walking out. The drive home passed in a blur. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. He'd let himself believe. Worse, he'd let Lily believe. Now he had to tell her that her faith in him had been misplaced. At home, he moved through the motions of making dinner, though he had no appetite. The macaroni and cheese, Lily's favorite, sat untouched in front of him as he waited for the school bus to drop her off. The front door opened at 3:45. "Daddy?" Lily's voice called out. "Are you home?" "In the kitchen, sweetheart." She bounded in, her face expectant. When she saw his expression, her steps slowed. Without a word, she climbed into her chair beside him. Daniel stared down at his cold macaroni. "The bank is closing," he said finally. "They won't be giving us the loan." Oh. Lily's small voice was quiet. I'm sorry, honey. I know you believed in me. Everyone did. But sometimes, he swallowed hard. Sometimes things just don't work out the way we hope. The silence stretched between them. Then Daniel felt Lily's small hand cover his own where it rested on the table. You've already built your business, Daddy, she said softly. The bank just didn't see it. The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on Lily Harper's determined face. She stood on her tiptoes at the counter, carefully placing homemade chocolate chip cookies into small plastic bags. Each bag bore a carefully hand-drawn label reading Daddy's Repairs in rainbow colors, decorated with hearts and tools. Daniel shuffled into the kitchen, still in his pajamas, and blinked in surprise. Lily? What are you doing up so early? Making advertisements. Lily beamed, holding up one of the bags. Mrs. Johnson. From church always says the way to someone's heart is through their stomach. And look. She pointed to the paper labels. I made our logo. Daniel's throat tightened as he looked at his daughter's artwork. She had drawn a hammer crossed with a screwdriver, surrounded by a heart. Below the business name, she'd written in careful letters, We fix things with love. Honey, I don't know if Daniel started, but Lily was already moving to put on her shoes. Come on, Daddy, get dressed. We need to deliver these before people leave for work. Her enthusiasm was contagious, her eyes sparkling with purpose. Daniel felt his resistance crumbling. How could he say no to such faith? 20 minutes later, freshly showered and dressed in his cleanest work shirt, he found himself walking down their street with Lily skipping beside him, carrying her basket of cookie advertisements. Their first stop was the Martinez family. Mrs. Martinez answered the door still in her nursing scrubs, having just returned from the night shift. Good morning, Lily chirped, holding out a cookie bag. This is from Daddy's repair service. He can fix anything. Mrs. Martinez's tired face softened. Oh, how wonderful. You know, my garbage disposal has been making the strangest noise. Before Daniel could protest, she invited them in to look at it. The problem was simple, a loose connection he could fix in minutes. When he finished, Mrs. Martinez insisted on writing down his phone number. My sister was just saying her porch rail needs fixing, she said, pressing the paper to her fridge with a magnet. I'll give her your number. They visited 6 more houses that morning. At each stop, Lily's cookies opened doors, and Daniel found himself examining leaky faucets, sticky windows, and wobbly chairs. People didn't just need repairs, they needed someone they could trust, someone local who cared. By mid-morning, Daniel had 4 small jobs scheduled and 3 referrals. His pocket held a collection of scraps of paper with phone numbers and addresses. More importantly, he saw how neighbors' faces lit up when Lily explained their business plan, how they nodded approvingly at the idea of a local handyman service. They were heading home when Margaret's car pulled up alongside them. She stepped out, wearing casual clothes instead of her usual bank attire, and carrying a thick folder. I hoped I'd find you two, she said, smiling at Lily's nearly empty cookie basket. Do you have time for coffee? There are some people I'd like you to meet. At the local diner, Margaret introduced them to Bob Wilson, commander of the local VFW post, and Sarah Chen from Hope Community Partners, a faith-based nonprofit. Both organizations, it turned out, offered small business microgrants to community members who demonstrated both need and service. We've been hearing about your work, Daniel, Bob said, stirring his coffee. What you did for Jim Carter with that ramp that meant a lot to us. Veterans, looking out for veterans. That's what we're about, Sarah nodded, opening her folder. And our organization specifically focuses on businesses that strengthen community bonds. From what Margaret's told us, that's exactly what you're doing. Daniel listened, amazed, as they explained the grant programs. Neither offered huge amounts, but combined with his savings and the community fund from church, it might be enough to properly launch his business tools, insurance, a proper work truck. The application processes are simple, Margaret explained, and I'll help you with the paperwork. These organizations care more about character than credit scores. Lily, who had been quietly coloring on her placemat, looked up. See, Daddy? God had a better plan than the bank. The adults around the table chuckled, but Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. His daughter's simple faith had never wavered. Even when his had. That evening, After a dinner of grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, Daniel and Lily knelt beside her bed for their nightly prayers. The bedroom was cozy in the soft lamplight, Lily's drawings covering one wall and her stuffed animals arranged carefully on her shelf. "Dear God," Lily began, her small hands clasped tightly. "Thank you for giving Daddy new friends to help him. Thank you for Mrs. Martinez and her garbage disposal. And for Mr. Wilson and Miss Chen. And thank you for Margaret, who's the nicest bank person ever." Daniel squeezed his daughter's hand, adding his own silent prayer of gratitude. The day's events had shown him something important. Sometimes closed doors led to better paths, and sometimes the biggest blessings came wrapped in the smallest packages, like cookies in plastic bags with rainbow-colored labels. "And please help all the broken things find someone to fix them," Lily concluded. "Amen." "Amen," Daniel echoed softly. As he tucked her into bed, Lily yawned. "Daddy, I think tomorrow we should make more cookies. The peanut butter kind this time." Daniel kissed her forehead, overwhelmed by the pure love and trust in her sleepy smile. For the first time since the bank's closure announcement, he felt truly at peace. The path ahead wasn't clear yet, but with Lily's faith, the community's support, and God's guidance, he knew they would find their way. Over the next several days, Daniel and Lily's kitchen table transformed into their business headquarters. Colored markers, construction paper, and Lily's ever-present drawings scattered across its worn surface. Daniel sat hunched over, carefully printing "Harper Daughter Repairs" at the top of each flyer, while Lily added her special touch, little hearts and tools in the margins. "How about this slogan, sweetie?" Daniel asked, showing her his neat handwriting. "No job too small. We give it our all." Lily wrinkled her nose. "It's good, Daddy, but can we add fixing things with love too?" "That's our special thing." Daniel smiled and added Lily's suggestion. Together they listed their services: fence repairs, basic plumbing, carpentry work, and general handyman tasks. At the bottom, Daniel included his phone number and a simple promise: honest work at fair prices. The next morning, they set out with their stack of flyers. The local diner's owner, Betty, immediately posted one in her front window. "About time you made it official, Daniel," she said, giving Lily a free chocolate milk. "My kitchen sink's been dripping for weeks." At the hardware store, old Mr. Peterson didn't just take a flyer, he offered Daniel a discount on supplies. "Consider it an investment," he said, patting Daniel's shoulder. "This town needs good people like you. The church bulletin board, the grocery store, the community center, everywhere they went, people welcomed their flyers with enthusiasm. Some even took extras to share with friends and family." As word spread, the phone calls began. Mrs. Anderson needed her porch steps rebuilt. The Wilsons had a broken garage door. Mr. Carter, whose wheelchair ramp had started it all, recommended Daniel to his veterans group. Community support poured in unexpectedly. Tom from the lumberyard offered leftover materials at cost. Jack, a retired electrician, volunteered to teach Daniel more advanced repairs. Even the local coffee shop started keeping Daniel's flyers by the register. One particularly busy morning, while Daniel fixed a broken fence at the Thompsons' house, Lily sat nearby on a blanket, doing her homework and occasionally handing him tools. Sarah Thompson brought them both lemonade and cookies. "You know," Sarah said, watching them work together, "seeing you two reminds me what community is all about. We've missed this kind of thing in town." Daniel wiped his brow, touched by her words. "We're just trying our best, ma'am." "And that's exactly what we need," Sarah replied, smiling at Lily. A reminder that sometimes the best business plan is simply caring about people. Later that week, Margaret visited them at home, bringing news that surprised them both. She stood in their living room, looking more relaxed than they'd ever seen her in her usual bank attire. "I've resigned from the bank," she announced, smoothing her casual sweater. "I'm starting a community credit union. Something that actually serves people like you, Daniel, good people who just need a fair chance." "Margaret, that's amazing," Daniel stammered. "But are you sure? Your career at the bank was just a job?" Margaret finished, sitting down as Lily offered her a cookie. "What you and Lily showed me, that's a calling. Sometimes it takes a child's wisdom to remind us what really matters." Lily beamed at this, proudly showing Margaret their day's earnings. "Look what Daddy made today," And I helped by organizing his tools and writing thank you notes. You did more than help, sweetheart, Daniel said softly. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Margaret reached out and squeezed his hand. You helped me find my courage too, both of you. Sometimes the best things in life come from facing our fears and doing what's right anyway. As the days passed, Daniel's confidence grew with each completed job. He kept careful records of every repair, every earning, and every expense in a notebook Lily had decorated with stickers. The work wasn't always easy, but it was honest and fulfilling. One particularly beautiful evening, after a full day of repairs, Daniel and Lily sat together on their porch swing. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, casting a golden glow over their small front yard. Between them sat their earnings tin and old cookie container Lily had transformed with paint and glitter. Daniel pulled his daughter close, overwhelmed by how far they'd come. Inside that tin was more than money. It represented their first step toward a real future, built on trust, hard work, and community support. Lily snuggled against his side, her small hand resting on the tin. We did it, Daddy, she whispered, her voice filled with quiet pride. The morning sun cast long shadows across the church parking lot as Daniel's freshly painted pickup truck rumbled to a stop. The white lettering on its blue doors gleamed. Harper, Daughter Repairs, with a small heart dotting the I. Lily's special touch. Inside the cab, Daniel adjusted his worn leather tool belt, while Lily bounced excitedly in the passenger seat, her own miniature tool belt, a gift from Margaret, jingling with plastic tools. Ready for our big day, sweetheart? Daniel asked, his voice carrying a mix of pride and nervous energy. Lily nodded enthusiastically, her pigtails bobbing. We're going to fix God's house, Daddy. She clutched her small hammer, a real one Margaret had specially picked out for her, lightweight but sturdy, perfect for her small hands. As they stepped out of the truck, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The entire town seemed to have gathered in front of the old white church. Elderly Mr. Carter sat in his wheelchair near the front. The ramp Daniel had fixed months ago, allowing him prime viewing position. The Veterans Association members stood in a group, their caps marking them out clearly. Betty from the diner had brought coffee and donuts for everyone. Look who's here, Lily squealed, pointing toward Margaret, who stood apart from the crowd in a casual weekend outfit, so different from her former bank manager suits. She looked more relaxed now, happier, as she worked to establish the community credit union. Daniel, Lily, Margaret called out, walking over to greet them. She hugged Lily and smiled warmly at Daniel. The whole town's been talking about nothing else all week. Harper, daughter tackled the church roof. It's practically headline news. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, still unused to being the center of attention. It's just a repair job, he said modestly, but his eyes shone with pride. Daddy, can we start now? Lily tugged at his sleeve, eager to begin their biggest project yet. The pastor approached, his kind face beaming. We've got all the materials ready, Daniel. The volunteers are here to help with the heavy lifting, but everyone knows you're in charge. Daniel surveyed the scene before him. Stacks of shingles waited nearby, along with all the tools they'd need. Several strong young men from the congregation stood ready to assist. This job would have seemed impossible just months ago. But now, with the community behind him, Daniel felt ready. He checked Lily's safety harness one more time. She wouldn't be going up high, but she'd be climbing the first few rungs of the ladder with him, just as they'd practiced. Her hard hat, decorated with flower stickers, sat perfectly on her head. Remember what we always say before a big job? Daniel asked her. Lily's face lit up. Safety first, heart second, work third. The crowd chuckled, and Daniel saw several people wiping their eyes. These weren't just customers anymore, they were family. Each person here had played a part in their journey, from Miss Carter's broken ramp to Betty's leaky diner sink. As Daniel positioned the ladder, Margaret stepped forward to address the crowd. 6 months ago, I watched a little girl tell her father's story in my bank office. Today, I'm watching that same story touch our entire community. Sometimes the best investments aren't found in spreadsheets. They're found in the heart. Daniel felt his own eyes growing moist as he checked the ladder's stability. He turned to face the gathering. I couldn't have done any of this without all of you believing in us. Especially you, Margaret. You saw something worth fighting for. Up we go, Daddy," Lily called out, already gripping the ladder's lower rungs. The crowd held its collective breath as Daniel climbed the first few steps with Lily beside him. She beamed down at everyone, her tool belt catching the morning light. Camera phones clicked in word, capturing the moment. "That's high enough for you, Princess," Daniel said when they reached the agreed-upon height. "Wave to everyone." Lily waved her hammer proudly. "We're going to fix what's broken," she declared, her voice ringing clear across the churchyard. The townspeople erupted in cheers and applause. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, remembering that first day in the bank when corporate rules had almost stopped her from seeing what was right in front of her, a good man who just needed a chance. Daniel helped Lily back down the ladder, and she ran to stand beside Margaret as he climbed higher to begin the real work. The volunteers moved into position, ready to pass up materials. Someone started singing an old hymn, and others joined in, their voices rising with the morning Sunday. As Daniel reached the roof and secured his safety line, he looked down at his daughter. Lily stood holding Margaret's hand, both of them watching him with identical expressions of pride. The sight nearly overwhelmed him, his little girl who never stopped believing, and the woman who had risked her career to help them succeed. "Remember, Daddy," Lily called up. "Hearts second." Daniel touched his chest, then pointed to Lily, their special signal. Below, the crowd continued to gather, neighbors bringing lawn chairs and picnic blankets, settling in to watch their community come together, one shingle at a time. The sun climbed higher as Daniel began his work, each hammer strike echoing with the rhythm of new beginnings. By sunset, he would lift Lily onto his shoulders in triumph, but for now, he savored this moment, balanced between earth and sky, surrounded by the love of his daughter and his town, finally knowing with certainty that he had found his true calling. The sun blazes high above as Daniel secures the final shingle. The crowd cheers, Lily claps wildly, and Margaret's eyes glisten with pride. For the first time in years, Daniel feels truly lifted, like he's standing not just on a roof, but on the threshold of a brand new life. I'd love to hear from you in the comments, not only your theories about that shocking cliffhanger, but also where you're watching from and how this story touched your heart. If you believe in stories about resilience, love, and the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things, I'd be honored if you subscribed and joined our growing community. Together, we're keeping alive the kind of storytelling that reminds us of what really matters. And before I go, let me leave you with this. You are seen, you are valued, and your story matters too. Never forget that. Until next time, stay inspired, stay hopeful, and keep believing in the power of love to fix what feels broken.